in place to keep us in chains. By show of hands, who else is sick and tired of the same 1%? Trying to keep us small, trying to keep us from getting out. Minimizing the struggles they've caused, saying we're not working hard enough.
We really should stop this fighting. Otherwise, we'll miss the fireworks.
There won't be any fireworks.
And here we go.
And welcome everybody to Suck It. I am the great and powerful King of Kings, Prince of all that is awesome, Derek. How are you today? It is a lovely day here in Northern Virginia. Just, you know, it's been snowing like crazy, but today we had a 50-degree weather day. It's been very, very nice. Weather's finally starting to warm up a little bit, which, you know, I don't particularly care for too much because I like the cold. But at the same time, it's a nice little break from everything else that's been going on. So I hope everything else is going well for you. I know it's going well for me over here. But please come along with me on this journey that we're going to take today, because we got an interesting one today. And I have been looking forward to this for a little over a week and a half now. And due to a bunch of different delays, I was sick one day, and then she was sick one day, and then one day I just overslept and lost track of time. But now fourth time is the charm. We're going to get this done today, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So today, my guest had a weird childhood, and we'll go into that here in a moment. But for lack of a better term, she pretty much grew up in a cult. And we'll go into that and what the repercussions were after the fact that she left, and all the other stuff that she's had to deal with in her life has led her to this point. And she's a very inspirational and motivational person, and I'm very, very excited to have on with me today Miss Lisa Kohn. How are you?
I am wonderful that we're now finally actually talking.
I know, right? Fourth time's a charm.
Fourth time is a charm. I don't know what they say about the other ones, but this one's good. Absolutely.
This one's going to be good. I can feel it in my bones.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, how are you surviving this weird, heavy winter?
Oh man. Well, so you can't, but you can see me, but so I used to be almost 5 feet at one point, and now I'm like probably almost 4'10". And I was saying to someone today, when you're shoveling and the piles are higher than you are,
yeah,
it's not always great. It's been a hell of a lot of snow.
Hell yes, it has.
It's been like I'm done. So hopefully the world agrees with me that, you know, March will come in like a lamb and go out like a lamb, and we'll have spring this year. But yeah, it's been a long winter.
It really has. I mean,
the last few weeks have been a long winter, right? It wasn't for a while, and the last few weeks have been a long winter.
Yeah, I woke up yesterday morning to it snowing pretty heavily,
Yes.
and then it immediately turned to sleet, and
Yes.
then almost immediately to rain, and it was just like, what just happened?
Yes.
But
Yes.
That's the lovely part of living in the mid-Atlantic or Northeast, wherever you're at. So, but whatever. So, let's just jump right into this here because, you've got a great story to tell, and I cannot wait to be the megaphone for that, because this is going to be an amazing conversation. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of start from there.
So you alluded to it. So the way I describe my childhood is the best seats I ever had at Madison Square Garden or at my mother's wedding. And if you're old enough to know what that means, I grew up in the Unification Church, the Moonies, the cult of all cults, and the American age of cults, when my mom got married on July 1st, 1982, with 2,075 other couples in Madison Square Garden. And I had seats on the floor, right? Red seats, the only time I've ever seen anything with red seats. And on the other hand, the best cocaine I ever had was from my father's friend, the judge. So, and someone once said, "You're joking, right? Not a judge." I'm like, "No, really, a judge of a small town in New Jersey, right outside of New York City." So I grew up in a cult, best friends with Reverend Moon's kids. That was my life. It was everything on one hand, and on the other hand, I had sex, drugs, and squalor, is how I described my life with my dad in New York City's East Village in the 1970s. So it was interesting. And now I have a I don't, normal's not good, right? But I own a leadership consulting and executive coaching firm. I've been married for 20 something years. I have 2 kids. Like life, I am happy, healthy, whole. And oh, by the way, I have all those scars from my childhood still in me. So yes.
Yeah. Because those never go away. I mean, they're scars for a reason. They're not called scratches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that more than most. So I get it. But so let's kind of start at the beginning here because I'm kind of curious how this all came about. And so obviously your mom and dad were separated, divorced, or not together at the time. And so your dad was not part of this, but your mother was.
Yeah. So, well, first I'm going to go back to the scars because I want to say, well, my hand is always practically on my heart, but, and I was just saying this to someone else, right? Like it doesn't go away, but it gets better.
Yes.
You get better. If it doesn't get better, you get better. And when the book came out, I still think I thought I was damaged. I'm not damaged. I have damage. It's a very different thing, right?
Correct.
Right. And so, and I've always like, if anyone feels hopeless, damaged beyond repair, you're not damaged and there is hope, right? And the ability to get from there's something fundamentally wrong with me to, wow, that sucked. Okay, now what? is a huge thing. But I threw that in because I do.
Well,
So
no, because
yeah,
you're 100% right with that. So I'm sorry to cut you off.
no,
But
it's okay.
no, because I say all the time that I am not a bipolar person. I'm just a person that happens to be bipolar.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're on the. Yeah, I agree with you 100%
Whole
on that.
different, right? It's a
Correct.
whole different. It is my identity, but it's not me.
Correct.
Part of me, right? And it's part of me that I have and I live with, and thank you for saying that because we need to the more, and why am I out here doing this? Because the more we talk about this, the more the shame of all those bad things, which is useless and debilitating, can hopefully go away. So yes. So yeah, my parents were babies having babies. They met in high school, got pregnant with my brother, got married, had him at 19 and me at 20. And by the time I was 2 or 3, they'd already split. So we were living with my mom and sometimes visiting my dad. And long story short, and it was the 60s and they were hippies and it was crazy and it was drugs and it was encounter groups and it was primal screaming and it was just hippie life in every way. And the summer between my second and third grade of school, my mom bought a van actually for my dad, Danny. To this day, that's my dad. Don't call me by a name, by a label, call me by my name. I'm Danny. If you call me Dad, I'll call you Dot. If you call me Daddy, I'll call you Dottie. So my mom bought a van from Danny, and we were going to drive across country to go live on a commune in California. And instead, my grandmother got sick with cancer, my mom's mom, and we drove across New Jersey to live with them. And my grandmother passed and we stayed. And long story short, we stayed. My mom's taking care of the house for my grandfather. And in January of 1974, the person who my mom used to hitchhike across the country with every summer said, "Oh my God, you have to come hear Reverend Moon speak." And my mom went to hear him speak in Princeton, New Jersey, and came back. This is it. It's amazing. This is truth. And took a little while to do anything. But then as the summer went on, members convinced her to go up to Barrytown, New York, a huge indoctrination center. And she went up for the weekend and came back and went up for a week and came back and went up for like the summer. And at one weekend, put us in the van and drove my brother and I up, and we get to the big building and we go into the building and to the huge gymnasium, and all the women, all the sisters are sitting on the floor, and all the men, all the brothers are sitting on the other side of the floor. And within moments, Moon walks in with his interpreter and starts speaking. And that was it. I was a Moonie. He was my Messiah. That was the truth. And longer story short, soon thereafter, my mom basically sat us down and said, I think I need to be more involved. What should I do? And we said, you should leave us and go serve God. And she did. And we were living with my grandfather, and I'm in 6th grade, shopping, cooking, cleaning, running the household, doing everything, because he's on the verge of a nervous breakdown, because he got depressed when my grandmother died and was a lawyer and stopped practicing his cases and got disbarred and was almost put in jail. And they finally put him in the hospital and shuffle us around for a little while until someone tells Danny what's going on. And he comes to get us, and we move into New York City with him. And so I end up living with my dad, with Satan, right? And Satan life on the weekdays, and my heart and soul on my weekends and my holidays were with the Messiah. Moon, who was my Messiah, and sometimes my mom, but always the Messiah, you know, in the church. So that's like the story.
All right,
Yeah.
so let me summarize this to make sure I
Yeah, 'cause I know it's confusing because people
no,
always get the details wrong.
I think I got it. Okay, so how old were you when all this began?
When we joined the church, my mom at the church, I was 10.
Okay, so one weekend your mom comes back from this retreat or whatever it was, and says, "Hey, I've discovered this," and then for a while she goes back and forth, then eventually takes you up there, and not because of something your mom said, but because of Reverend Moon, you actually bought into all of this.
I would say it's yes and. So one, if my mother was happy and she used to not talk, she used to have no talking days, and she was happier and felt more fulfilled. So it's good. And if you're in a room where everybody bows when someone walks in, you know that you should bow when he walks in, and then you bow, and like it is self-fulfilling. Like people once said, why did you believe? I'm like, well, why did you believe in Catholicism or Judaism or Hinduism or whatever you were brought up with? Because you were told this is it, right? And then the other thing I always try to say, so I do call it a cult. It was dangerous, it is disastrous, there's a lot of awful about it. But when we joined, it was a haven for my brother and I. It was structure. It was love from all these people. It was safer than where we came from. So the love and the joy of that, and the third thing I will say is, so unless you are like really psychotic or a sociopath or already involved in something like this, we are all susceptible to extreme belief, right? Because as humans, we crave certainty, purpose, and community. And an extreme belief, a cult gives you absolute certainty, purpose beyond belief, and a community you will never replicate, right? So it was structure, it was community, it was love. My mom was happy. People said this was true. They said, this is God. And you're like, okay. And then that's it. And then you're in. That's your life.
So you just touched on something that we're going to dive into more in a second, or in a little bit, actually. The fact that we're all susceptible to that cult mentality. So we're going to go into that a little bit later. So I want to make sure you know that I didn't miss that, because I'm already on that same wavelength.
Threw it in there. Yep.
We're going to go into that because I got some things I want to compare this to. But
Sure.
until then, so you became indoctrinated into this, cult, and you were living with Satan, sometimes with your dad, and then living with the Messiah, other times. What was it like when you were with your dad? I mean, did you feel different? Did you feel uncomfortable? Did you not want to be there? Did you try to turn him? I mean, what exactly was that situation like?
Yes, and yes. So one of the best things I can say about Danny is he never spoke negatively about Moon, about the church, or about my mother, which is amazing. All of his friends did, but he never did, right? Because he knew he would really lose us. But he knew that we fervently believed. So I didn't want to be there. I asked not to be there. I begged my mother to take us and not make me live with my father. I was uncomfortable. It was scary. It was, he used to jokingly offer to sell me to his friends for drugs, right? And I do these readings, and I was reading that from the memoir, and one of his friends from that time was at the reading, and she says to me, well, they were kidding. And I'm like, it's still not okay, right? Like, how much cocaine will it take for him to be able to take me home with him? Like, so it was scary. It was, and my dad, I know why he's like this, but he's really crusty on the outside. I had no idea that he loved me. He's inappropriate. He's an asshole, right? In many ways. And so I didn't want to be there. And yes, we would try and convince him and convert him and beg him to come join us. And, the going back and forth sucked, really sucked, right? Because I would hide my life at home with my father from the church. Like, people in the church found out about it now, right? When the book came out, and I would be with my dad and know that, I was living with Satan and part of the satanic world. And we were you have to understand, we were taught that if we ever thought, questioned anything, or didn't believe, it was Satan inside of us. And so it was this absolute terror that I would be taken over by evil spirits and by Satan, and break God's heart. I still can feel like I'm going to break God's heart, right? And personally cause God pain. What a huge thing to put on anybody, especially a kid. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was did not want to be there, did not like being there, and probably judged every single thing he did. Like he would make mussels with beer, and I'd be like, ah, and he'd be like, the alcohol boils off. The alcohol boils off. I'm like, but it's beer. It's beer. I was this really puritanical kid.
um, yeah, the whole, and not just what you're describing. In my opinion, what you just said is, religion almost as a whole. And not all of it. Obviously, there's some really good ones out there, and there the non-denominational ones that just be happy, live happy. Hey, this is how it is, are cool. But I was raised as a Catholic, and we had that same mentality. You can, if you do this, you're going to hell. If you don't do this, you're going to hell, and all this stuff. I mean, but then as I grew up, I started to see little things here and there that really made me realize, oh my God, this is just a cash grab. What is this? What am I witnessing here? And, luckily I figured it out pretty quickly when I was only, 6th or 7th grade. But, it was pretty disheartening, especially like after, because I had grown up and went to Catholic school as a kid. And then I went to 7th grade in public school because I eventually taught my mom, hey, I need to get out of this. But when I went and did that, I immediately went and got my ears pierced. I'm like, I'm rebelling. I'm gonna get my ears pierced. 6 or 7 weeks later, a couple months later, my mom took us to go see my grandmother in Cocoa Beach. And Cocoa Beach, very much a retirement place. It's retirement people and surfers. That's for Cocoa Beach. So we went there, and my mom said, hey, let's all go to church together. I'm like, no, I don't want to go, but we're going to go anyway. Make my grandmother happy. And the fucking priest told me that I was going to hell because I defiled God's body.
Yes.
As a 13-year-old boy, what happened? That just, at that moment on, I was like, I am done. I mean, I already knew I was done, but that just solidified it. And it was an immediate wake-up call, like, and then I just started doing research upon research upon research because I wanted to know why. Mm-hmm. Why was this so prolific? Why is this, do you have to believe in this? Why is this, it doesn't matter if it's, Judaism, whatever, or Catholicism, it's why. And so I dedicated my life to that. And so what you're saying is really hitting home, and it's just like, damn. So I feel you. I really, really do. So, all right, so let's reel back in, Derek. Stop blabbering.
I enjoyed it, but yeah.
I do too. I love to hear myself talk. That's why I have my microphone in my ear so I can hear myself speak all the time. It's fantastic. I'm very arrogant like that. No, I'm just kidding. So how long did you go through with this? At what point did you finally say, oh, wait a second?
So you grew up and then you knew it wasn't true.
Correct.
When you got out, right?
Yeah.
And I have met, when I left, I was alone, and I'll come back to that. But, in the recent past, I found the community of cult survivors, and we're called second gens, those of us born and or raised, second, third, fourth gens in a cultist situation. And I found ones from my church, many of whom were like born into it, are very special, who knew very young on that it wasn't true and pulled themselves out, which is still hard. When I left, I still knew it was true. So here's the soap opera that happened. So
Please.
Spending every summer, every holiday, every moment that I can in the church. And then the summer between my junior and senior year of high school, Danny sends me to music camp. And to this day, I'm convinced to keep me away from the church because I always was with the church and he never spent money on us. And so I go to music camp and it's the first time away from the church, right? And from home. And so I become friends with people who, for the first time, beknownst to me, are gay and or bisexual, which is a huge sin like many churches and Puritan, huge sin in my church. And I write to my mom and I'm like, what do I do? And she says, well, they're evil and sinful. You can either convert them or just stay away from them. And for the first time, I can't just go along with it. And remember, I'm told that if I ever question, it's Satan in me. So I'm not agreeing with my mom and I'm invaded by Satan, right? And I'm terrified. And then I come home from camp. And so I'm not only a Moonie, but I happen to be best friends with his kids. These are the true children. The Messiah's children are true children. They're just like special. I'm best friends with one of his daughters. And then there are these blessed children. So the big marriages are called blessings, and it removes the original sin. And so these are children born without original sin, and they're amazingly, wonderfully special. And then there's me, evil, sinful me. So I'm friends with the true children and the blessed children. And I come home, and one of my friends, a blessed child, was seduced by our Sunday school teacher at the age of 16, having an affair with him, gets pregnant. And in order to like have no one notice, and because she was jealous of me, she spread rumors about me. She basically said I wanted to sleep with all the men. And Moon hears these rumors, believes these rumors, and makes a decree that only blessed children can play with the true children. In other words, to keep me away. He made this decree to keep me away from his kid. I like to say my Messiah banished me. So I come home from music camp questioning and knowing that Satan's inside me. And the Messiah apparently agrees because he banishes me from his kids. And so I go to my senior year of high school thinking, okay, you joined when you were 10 as a child. Now you need to pull back the age of 17, like pull back a little bit so that you can come back and make an adult decision to join and never question again and never leave. And so I pull back a little bit and I start hanging out on the weekends with Danny, and I start getting more involved in my school and making friends and being more involved and find more love there and joy and friendship with these new friends than I was feeling in the church. So get very more confused. And then I start experimenting with alcohol, and I throw a party for my best friend, and I kiss a boy, and then I have a boyfriend, which is that's like the hugest sin, right? The fall of man is premarital sex, and that's like the hugest sin. And all hell breaks loose, and I'm tormented, and everybody's screaming at me, and everyone's terrified that I'm going to leave and fall. And so it's the summer before college, and I make a decision that I will go to college. I go up to Cornell in Ithaca, New York, and he stays home in New York City. And I say, okay, I'm going to go, and I break up with him, and I don't. And then I almost jump off a bridge because it's Cornell. And I don't jump off the bridge, obviously. And then I just proceed. As my brother said, I never left. I just slowly drifted away because I knew he was the Messiah. And I knew that I wasn't good enough and I was failing and breaking God's heart. And so I slowly drift away. It takes years for that process. And like, so my freshman year, I almost jump off a bridge. My sophomore year, I become hugely anorexic. My junior year, I do a hell of a lot of cocaine, including with the judge. And my senior year, I just get in more and more destructive, abusive relationships to punish myself probably for leaving the Messiah. And then long story short, I get engaged to a man who actually works for my dad, who owns a restaurant at that point, who drinks a hell of a lot. And someone points me to Al-Anon, that 12-step program for those of us hanging on to the alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I crawl into my first meeting saying, tell me if he's an alcoholic. There's no way I would ever be with an alcoholic because I'm so fucking functional on the outside. I have no idea that I'm broken on the inside. And I come to realize that my dad has drank and drugged every day of my life. There's alcoholism and addiction all over my father's family. Oh, and I grew up in a cult. There's like every reason why I would engage myself to an alcoholic, right? And so that was whoa, where I first realized that I wasn't fine. I just became only my problems and my scars and my damage. And that was in 1987. It's been a process since of self-love and healing and, being able to see, literally my brain was carved. So it's true of many extreme religions, right? It's true of maybe many religions, but they've done research, right? That those of us born and or raised, our brains are carved in very specific ways. When you contain a brain, when it's supposedly developing, and you contain a personality when it's supposedly developing, it affects you in very specific ways. And, to this day, I walk around and be like, that's the cult talking. That's the cult in my brain. That's what I was taught. That's a lie in my brain that I was given to control me, right? Because it was about control. And only in the recent past have I seen actually the horrific stuff about my cult, right? Because I believed when I left, I just didn't want to do it.
Mm.
And over the years, I have come to realize he's not the Messiah. And it's been a hard thing to say. But when I look back at actually what it was, it's not good. It's not good. So I don't even remember what you asked me, but there's a long answer.
No, I think you hit the points there. So you walked away and just began a destructive path because you were punishing yourself, basically, which happens, outside of situations like this, that's, survivor's guilt, I'm leaving a abusive marriage and now I'm going to go get in 5 more different abusive relationships. And, I don't deserve anything better. This is all I've known and da, 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 da. It's all part of it. It's all, it's not just one sect of the community that goes through it. It's anyone that has to deal with any type of abuse as a child, and or even as an adult, it's very scary to know. And it's just a hard thing to really grasp, that the one thing that is supposed to be your saving grace, the one thing that you're supposed to, wake up and believe every day, could be the downfall of you too. And that is a harsh reality to believe. And it's gotten to the point now to where, that is kind of where this society as a whole is going. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about what I was just kind of hinting towards. Because over the last few years, I have seen some of the most, let's just call it what it is, some of the most fucked up shit I have ever seen in my life. And it's not just coming from one thing. It's multiple directions. Whether it's a Retrumplican, whether it's QAnon, whether it's, I'll go into this as well, flat earthers, and, all these different things. Our society, and I'm not talking about other countries, I'm talking about just America as a whole. We have gotten this cult-like mentality spread across the country right now. And it is so indoctrinated into the culture now that people don't even realize it. And it's sad. I read a news, because I do a news show every morning, but there was a news story that I did, I think it was yesterday morning, to where, just as a small example, 50% of Republicans polled for this poll said that they would leave the Republican Party to go follow Trump to a new political party. 50%. Now, doesn't matter if that's Trump or doesn't matter if it's, whoever. 50% of one group of people saying we're going to go ahead and leave and follow this one person is cult-like. Or, it's crazy. What is, in your best guess, how have we gotten to this point as a country to where we haven't, learned from the mistakes of our past, of our ancestors, of our, our mom and dad and our grandparents, and now all of a sudden we're falling into those same traps, but now on a bigger scale. We're not going to, the Caribbean and drinking the Kool-Aid. No. We're staying at home and drinking it by the gallon, because that's exactly what's going on now. So, what is, I can't even frame this into a question. So form it however you wish.
So yeah, my thoughts are going a lot of directions, but maybe 2 main ones. So one, back to, there is nothing as intoxicating as knowing you have the truth. It is the best drug ever. And I've done some, right? It is a powerful, incredible intoxication, right? And so, because I remember, like, at one point, Bruce was like, why do they believe anything he says? I'm like, because, well, one, it feels really good to believe. Even if it's not true, it feels really good to believe, right? 2, our brains confirmation bias. Our brains have evolved. Confirmation bias, we only see that which agrees with what we already believe to be true. You can have two different people with opposing views read an article, and one will know that it supports one and one will know it supports the other, right? We have confirmation bias. We have, bias that makes us only like people like us. We have a bias. My favorite bias is a bias that tells me that I'm not biased. I'm so objective. The rest of you are biased. And we all have that, right? So our brains have evolved, our negativity bias, right? Our fear. We've evolved to be fearful and, always fighting and, all the ways that we've evolved push us into that extremism as well, right? And so it is very easy to keep it going. And then I personally believe our country is very broken, right? It's very systemically racist, systemically misogynistic, systemically many, 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 many things.
Many things.
Many, 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 many things, right? And that power, as someone who stands with some power, right? That power is a very hard thing to admit you have and a hard thing to give up. And so you fight to keep the power, right? And we all feel like, well, not me. Like I've had a hard childhood. I like all that. So all the things our brain does and our communities do and the society reinforces funnels us right into, I have to wait, it does, right? And I have to say that I do believe that it can change. Right? I do believe that it will change. I still am quite Pollyannish. I am very spiritual and I believe in love. And I do think somehow love will prevail. And I think, the good about what's happened is like all this, like when you go into healing, when you go into recovery and you're like, oh my God, there's so much pus and gunk and inside me and you got to get it out. And so that's the technical word for it, the thing. And I do believe that somehow this may purge us as a whole, as humanity, as a society from some of that which needs to be purged. But yeah, like it's terrifying. It's terrifying, but it's understandable because again, if I can know that I'm right and you're wrong, it feels really good. It feels really good. So
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
No, and it makes a lot of sense, because looking at the past and the history of this country and the history of cults in this country and other things like that, I've come to the conclusion that there's two types of cult leaders and there's two types of followers. So the two types of cult leaders are one that actually believes that they have the sole truth and they're, that arrogant and, they are the only one that has the truth. And then number two just knows the power of manipulation and the power of words.
Yeah.
And then the other type is A, I truly believe this guy. I want to follow him. And then B, well, everybody else is doing it, might as well. And then they just kind of get sucked in somehow and they don't know anything better. So it's not about on the one side, the follower, the people that join in on this cult. It's not about being uneducated or miseducated. It's not about being dumb or stupid or any of that. It's about human dynamics. It's about just doing, that whole idea of, well, I want to be normal and I see all my other friends doing this, so might as well do it too. Or that whole herd mentality about, oh my God, I'm gonna go ahead and try this, and this just makes a lot of sense to me, and then you eventually start to believe. But then to know that there's people out there that are deliberately using this to their benefit is a sad realization.
So many thoughts, right? So when the book came out, I was on Megyn Kelly and they did this interview for the backstory. And the producer said to me, dude, back when there was Megyn Kelly, do you think Moon believed he was the Messiah? And I said, yeah, like if enough people bow to you, I think you come to believe it. So I think he believed it, but it was about power. And like when I pull apart now and see what actually happened, and damn, it was probably founded as a sex cult and like it was supposedly puritanical, but he has illegitimate kids and it's, all the hypocrisy that went on. So yeah, evil, right? But you're so ingrained, right? So when the book came out in 2018, and I keep talking about it because it was like this big moment for me, obviously. And I realized that I didn't used to be able to speak badly about him. Like I literally would not be able to talk because my brain was terrified to say the man was in it for power. But I learned a lot and I saw a lot and I had to grow to do it. But that's how strongly one believes. But I also want to point out that what you said about followership is true, but also like back in the 70s, right? And even true now, like a lot of people who joined my church, my unification church, my cult, did it for the most altruistic reasons, right? One human race under God, like one family, like bringing love to the world. Like if you don't see the evilness underneath, just what they're preaching is often a beautiful thing. And people would join because it was a beautiful truth and ideal, right? And there's a book, and I can't think of it now. It's a fictional book written about someone who in England whose sister joined the Unification Church, joined the Moonies, and this woman went in to get her out. And in the space of like a week, you watch the absolute indoctrination, right? And I read it and I'm like, oh my God, I remember that. But literally it's like, I know you're questioning, but that's just evil spirits. So like, don't question, see if you can believe instead, because you don't want evil spirits in it. Or when you go to bed tonight, write in your journal about what you believed, like what you learned today. And then they would write in the journal just to shut the people up. But your brain says, well, if I'm bowing to him, he must be the Messiah because I'm not an idiot. If I wrote in my journal that this is true, it probably is true because I'm not an idiot. And like, it's very easy to take an altruistic person or a person who isn't altruistic and twist the brain so that by the end of 3 weeks, you're like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't true. And then you believe. And then once you believe, like there's just a rationale, a way to explain anything. Or like the sky is blue. Okay. Actually now the sky is green. Okay. If God changed his mind, now the sky is green. Okay. Now it's yellow with pink polka dots. Okay. If God says so, I know I see blue, but God says it and I'm wrong. And so our brains are eager for this, unfortunately. Right. And so how do we say, I think it was Stephen Wright, whose joke is war over religion is like arguing over who has the best imaginary friend. Right. I do believe in spirit and in love and in a lot of goodness, but we don't know. But how do we say we don't know? And maybe there's no point, and it's much better to have a belief system. So yes,
Yeah.
and
So you kind of touched on two things there. So the first one is what I like to call subjective truths.
aren't they all? But yes.
Yeah, I mean, so you walk outside right now. I mean, 6 months ago we were all saying, "Hey, the grass is green." You walk outside right now in the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, or Midwest, and the grass is brown, if it's even there at all.
Yeah.
So is the grass truly green? Or when you walk out at sunset, is the sky still blue, or is it red, purple, pink, and every other color under the sun? It's a subjective truth. And the more that we realized that all truths are subjective to a point, the more we understand, hey, there's other things out there. It's that whole idea of science. There's no such thing in science as, well, I mean, there is to a certain degree, but this is for argument's sake, there's no such thing as fact in science. Mm-hmm. Everything is theory. Theory is the highest level of, thought and fact that you can have in science because it's ever evolving. You're constantly learning. You might think you know 100% about this and all of a sudden you learn something else tomorrow different.
Yep.
And it's a constant evolving thing, and that's all truths. Yep. All truths. And the quicker we learn that as a society, I think we'll be better off. So great point, and I've always agreed with that, and that's amazing.
Yep.
But excuse me, the whole cult-like mentality that's been flaunted, in the faces of us at this point, and one of the biggest ones, I mean, let's go ahead and leave the politic one alone because I already touched on it, but like Scientology. Because what you had said on the surface, one human race under God, living happily, everybody happy, hand in hand, sounds wonderful.
Beautiful.
Scientology does the same thing. Let's go ahead and, through, your process of going clear, let's go ahead and not just help you heal from your past traumas. Let's help you forget about them, and let's go ahead and just erase them from your life. Even your past traumas as a former, when you were reincarnated as somebody different, because you live with those lives as well, and all these traumas. Let's go ahead and get rid of them, and let's all just live harmoniously and happily, and then give me $500.
And tell me your worst secret so that if you ever want to leave, you can't.
Exactly. And then, if you try to leave, we'll just stalk you and tell your family to leave you and everything else in the process. And, we might
Shut
kidnap you. And
yes, exactly.
Yeah. But then if you stick around long enough, we'll tell you the story of Xenu and how we're all aliens from another planet and we're thrown into a volcano millions of years ago. It's such a stupid story. But anyway, I digress. But the whole idea is that even when people find out, what Scientology really is about, they still flock to it.
By the time they're there, right? It's a very slippery slope, right? Like if they told you that the day one, you'd be like, see ya.
Yeah.
But they so watch The Vow, right? Or Seduce, right? The two ones about NXIVM, right? The two documentaries about NXIVM. I can watch them absolutely, here's the reward you get for following this. And here's like just absolutely, you slowly give people a little something and take them further, give them a little something and take them further. So that by the time you get to the horrificness that might be underneath it, you're all in already, like sunk costs. You can't go back, right? Our human nature goes, well, I did this, so I much believe it. And it's better than going back there. And, why do businesses keep pouring money into losing operations, sunk costs? Well, let's keep trying, right? It's part of human nature. So yeah, if you just look at some of the teachings, they're ridiculous, and then when you're grown up with them, you don't know they're ridiculous, right? And so when, I hear some of the things I used to believe, I'm like, oh my God, that's insane. But it made sense at the time because everybody else around you, if everyone else around you is doing, right, that consistency, the principles of influence, Robert Cialdini's 5-6 principles of influence, right? If everyone around me is doing it, social proof, it must be right. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So you just said two things here. Influence and social. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and dive into the other type of, cult-like mentality that's in front of our faces that nobody sees. And that's social media influencers.
Absolutely.
They are cult leaders. Whether they want to think so or not, and whether they're doing it intentionally or not, it's exactly the same thought. Whether it's Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton, or whoever, Kylie Jenner, every time they go on and say, hey, look, I just got this great little new makeup. It plumps my lips and makes it look so much more full and blah, 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 blah. You can use my code in the bio below and get 15% off your first purchase. Yeah. Millions of dollars is sold. Mm-hmm. And they jump all over that. Or, and I'm guilty of it too. Every time I run an ad on this show, it's, use code SUCKITPODCAST for 15% off your next purchase, and thousands of, I don't get millions of dollars in revenue, but, thousands of dollars of sales go to this company and then, they give back to me. And it's like, oh, this is so nice. It's nice, but it's that same cult-like mentality. Now, again, they're not going into it. They're just going into it for the money. And we all know this, that one's right there in front of our face. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't think anyone's like, I'm basically forming a cult here. Might as well take advantage. But at the same time, it's that same mentality. And people, again, are ignoring it. So I think when we're so again, I've said this word like 10 times, but that whole indoctrinated ideal that, social media itself can teach you these things and we're that susceptible to it. So when somebody comes along like, QAnon, now all of a sudden they're spouting these truths as well. Yeah, and now we're going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and follow this guy. Yeah. Oh, wait, now the Proud Boys. Let me go ahead and follow them. Or no, now it's Antifa. Or now it's, let me go ahead and do something good. Let me go ahead and follow Black Lives Matter. I'm not saying Black Lives Matter is a cult, but I'm just giving you an example. It's, regardless, the whole Black Lives Matter thing, or Antifa thing, like, people might not have gotten into it because or thought it was a cult when they were getting into it, but they had that herd like mentality. I'm going to go ahead and support this, and I'm going to do this, and it wasn't the idea of it behind it. It was just the repercussions of it because of the way our brains think and way humanity works. And again, it's a really sad thing to know that something is so simple as this 17-inch monitor that's sitting in front of me, that's talking to you on Zoom, with a big label that says ASUS on the bottom, can have that much influence over anyone's lives. I mean, there was that Social Dilemma thing on Netflix that lots of people saw. And so nothing I'm saying here is profound or, oh my God, information, but it's amazing to where now we can go ahead and connect stuff like what happened with the Moonies, or maybe even David Koresh, or the drink your Kool-Aid guy, I can never remember his name, to Kourtney Kardashian, or Khloe Kardashian, or Kylie Jenner, or Paris Hilton, and the connection nobody else puts together when they're doing this, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah, but what comes to mind as you say that is a few things. One is it's a huge level of responsibility when you have that much influence.
Yeah.
And I think some people step up to it and some people don't, right? And
Correct.
I'm not going to name names or whatever, but it's hugely important to be aware, because we can have a herd-like mentality, and we can just want to follow, right? We can just want to be part of whatever it is. Again, we're looking for this answers and this certainty and the right thing. And I can watch myself. I've been at this for decades, and I can, I'm a coach, and I do a lot of learning and a lot of positive psychology and I can come onto something and hear my brain, hear like the person kind of talking about it as if it's the truth. And my brain goes, the truth. And then I have to be like, there isn't a truth. Take it in, think about it, be critical.
Yeah.
Walk your way down, right? But I'm compelled to do that. Maybe not again. The way we describe a cult, it's one of the models is the bite model, when it controls your behavior, your information, your thinking, and your emotions, right? Any of those four are really controlled. That's when it becomes an extremist situation. But this is the way our brains work, and we do need to be able to be conscious of it. And I am going to push back on the Black Lives Matter, because I have to. But I also know that a lot of people in the social justice, a lot of influencers in the social justice are working hard to not do that, right? To
Correct.
like that's what we do. So how do we pull back, and how do we not cancel, call each other out, and how do we actually change the way this all works?
Well, I'm not talking about the leaders of it. And I'm not talking about the idea of it. I'm talking about people who just kind of joined in because that's what everybody else is doing.
Because it's the thing, and
Correct.
It's the right thing to do.
That's
right?
what I was meaning.
And a good, right thing to do, but like, can you think about what it means and why?
Yeah.
And be conscious. Like, it's more important for me that I look at my own systemic racism and what I do and the microaggressions. And trust me, I work in diversity in the work I do, but I am just as fallible with all of it as anybody. That I look at all that, and I just sign the, and I do have a Black Lives Matter sign up, but like that, I just put a sign up, right? Like, am I really looking and learning and trying to see all the wacky things our brains do, and trying to see you and your humanity, even the most messed up people? How can I see their humanity, right? I may not agree with QAnon, and I happen to know, a lot of kids who grew up in the church, a lot of their parents are in QAnon, right? And Moon's kids were at the Capitol. I'm just saying, one faction of it, right? So it's there, but how do I have compassion for their humanity, even as I detest what they're teaching and what they're doing? Like, how do I walk that duality, which is one thing I do. So anyway, I preach.
No, it's perfectly fine. And I love that you connected, what I was saying as well, to where, people that you grew up with in the church are now part of QAnon, and they were at the Capitol riots. It's, again, that same mentality.
Mentality. They call it cult hopping. Seriously, there is a word for, I was this, and now I'm this, and now I'm that. It's like, now I have a new Messiah and a new truth. This one, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're 100% right on the cult jumping thing. So I've had a recent experience with a cult. And I briefly mentioned it about 10 minutes ago when I said the word or the phrase flat earthers.
Yes.
So I interviewed a very prolific man in the flat Earth community that is a great con man. He's all about selling merch and pushing his app that he sells for $4. But when I did what I did, he immediately, went onto his Facebook page and said, "Go attack this guy."
Yeah. Yeah.
Thousands of people came and did this.
Yeah.
And they're still doing it to this day.
Yeah.
Now, two things. Number one, I think it's funny. And number two, every time they click play or leave a comment on whether it's my YouTube, my Facebook, or Spotify, or anything else, all they're doing is helping my algorithm. So thank you. I appreciate your support. It's fantastic. So, it's whatever. But the whole idea that, they immediately went to insults and immediately start downing you. And then you start seeing some other things. Oh, I bet you he voted for Biden as well. Oh, I bet you he's a liberal. Oh, I was like, oh, wait a second. So now it's not just me being a round earther, a globe earther. Now it's okay. Now I'm not Republican as well. I don't believe everything that you believe. So now I must be a moron, an idiot. And I'm just so indoctrinated into other things that I don't even see the truth that's sitting in front of me. And it's like, wait a second. Now it's not just one thing. Now it's multiple things. And now it's like the wheels are turning and it's like, damn. So not only are these people susceptible to one, but they're susceptible to many. And it's, again, that is a scary thought, because to have that many truths being told to you can lead to a lot of different things. So let's go ahead and speak hypothetically for a second. Just go ahead and throw it out there. Say, for instance, all flat earthers were QAnon supporters. Okay, I'm just saying. I know they're not, and I'm not saying that they are, but so don't come at me, bro. But let's say, for instance, okay, so right now the biggest theory in QAnon world is on March 4th, which was the original date in the Constitution for the inauguration. Trump is going to be re-inaugurated. He's going to be president on March 4th. That's their biggest thing right now. So say, for instance, that didn't happen. And on March 4th, he wasn't re-inaugurated. He's not president. And on March 4th, Flat Earth is completely debunked 100%. What would happen on March 5th to all these people? Are we going to have riots and mass, suicides on the streets? Or are we going to have, okay, what's the newest thing that we're going to go ahead and jump on? And now we're just going to become something totally different. And, or are we just going to start having riots? And, how dare you defile our names? And you know what I'm saying? So like, if anything like that ever happened, to where multiple things within multiple different groups are all proved wrong at one time, you're a member of all three of them or four of them or just two, where does that leave that person?
So there's a couple first of all, I don't know.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's like when the riots happen in the Capitol and people are like, that's not our country. I'm like, hell yes, that's our country.
It is.
Like, how can you think it's not our country? It's completely right now our country, as terrifying as it was. And three, I firmly believe that we can't think that everything's fine now, right? Because it's not. So I've seen a bunch, right? There are doomsday cults, right? Even the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not an expert on the witnesses, but I know that like, there've been times where like, this is the date. Okay. This is the date. Okay. This is the date, right? And if you believe and your leader says God's changed his mind, because it's a patriarchal God, God's changed God's mind, you're like, okay, God changed the mind. It's not March 4th, it's March 10th, right? Or whatever it is. Or so it's when one believes that fervently, it's very easy to shift the truth, right? And yeah, could there be riots? Absolutely, because you have to understand, right? So, okay, the witnesses will go read obituaries, and if they see your parent or your partner or your child has died, they'll knock on your door and they'll say, if you join us, you'll see this person again, right? Moonies, we were told it's okay to lie. It's called heavenly deception. You can lie as much as you want to if you're doing it for God's will, right? Wow. It's okay to kill for God, right? So all of these things are sanctioned, right? And so, why, And as a Moonie, right, I knew I was saving you. So I'm actually helping you by lying to you, or I'm actually helping you by deceiving you or by indoctrinating you. I'm saving you. So I'm altruistically, right? And so if I believe all this and they say, well, the ride is what's going to need to happen in order to make this truth happen, and, him, the King of Kings, come back, then it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to do it. I would have died for
Yeah.
my Messiah. I would have killed. I would have questioned it, but done it anyway, knowing that I was wrong and he was right. Right. And so it's fervent belief that's,
Yeah.
my three messages. Extremist situations exist. They're prevalent. They're intoxicating, and they're way dangerous. Yes. Moon's youngest son runs Sanctuary Church, two youngest sons, where they are armed with AR-15s. They're the ones that brought the AR-15s to the wedding ceremony. They're armed, and right, and that's scary. That's scary. If the Messiah says kill, you're gonna kill. You are.
Yeah.
For anyone who feels hopeless or damaged beyond repair, there is hope, and you're not damaged. And as a species, from my work as a coach, as an executive coach, for my life, from all of this, I do believe that we as a species are way too hard on ourselves. Many of us, most of us, are self-critical, self-judging. We're just so mean to ourselves. So much shame, so much self-judgment, and we just need a huge dose of a hand on our heart and self-compassion, and I love you, Lisa, right?
I love you, Lisa.
Thank you. I love you too, Derek. Right? But we need more love.
Yeah.
And we need love first from us versus all that other crazy religious, non-religious, parental abuse, whatever that stuff we got. It's not true. So many people are walking around with so much shame and pain, and it's just not. As far as I know, I don't know, honestly. I do believe it's not true. I do believe that, that love and goodness prevails. So,
I agree.
I don't know.
No, I firmly agree with what you're saying. Like I said, and nothing I was saying, like I said, was, meant to, but it's my head immediately goes to that worst case scenario, and because it's like, what would happen in a situation like that? Now, again, are we ever going to have some? Probably not. Is there one way we can, prove this or prove that? And if March 4th, Trump doesn't come back, they're just going to say something else. Oh, well, now the government's trying to prevent the truth from coming out. It's, it's fine. Continue to have your beliefs. As a matter of fact, and I'll say this to the day I die, regardless of whether I agree with your beliefs or not, I will fight for you to have your right to have those beliefs. However, keep them away from other people. Let other people discover them for themselves and realize it for themselves and come to you willingly. Don't you come knocking to my door. Don't you come trying to find me in DC where I'm walking up and down the mall, or if I'm just wherever, you kind of come find me saying, hey, let me save you. Or, hey, have you heard about flat earth? Or, hey, Jesus loves you. Okay, I already knew that, but thanks. Why? It's I don't care about your beliefs, but I'll fight to protect them. But I don't care, and that's one thing that people just don't seem to grasp is that, and that whole, again, that herd mentality. It's hard to. Wow.
It's that herd mentality, and it's that if I truly believe it's true and right, then I will do anything to make sure everybody has it. And that's, they feed on themselves. They absolutely feed on themselves.
Yeah.
The whole point is to save the whole world. Yeah.
So, if you could oblige me on this one. So, say for instance, I am completely ignorant. I know the answer to this question. So I'm completely ignorant. I'm driving to work on whatever day this is airing, and I'm sitting there going, okay, so, all right, so I know she was part of a cult. I know she was a Moonie, whatever that is. Obviously there was, this or that. What ended up happening? You kind of get a good idea of, explaining all of it, and we kind of went along. So people have a great, firm grasp up to this point. What happened to the Moonies, and whatever happened to the Unification Church?
They are still there.
Okay.
They still own the New Yorker Hotel. They are still in the New Yorker Hotel. They just lease it out to one of the hotel companies, and you can rent a room there. When he died, I used to say they're still there. They just live next door to you, and they've kind of assimilated, so they're not as obvious, which is partially true. That they went through it's called the home church. time. And then when he died, the church did break into three factions, and I get the names wrong because they changed them. But so one faction is run by Hak Jahan, Moon's wife, and the people who followed her believe that's like Moon designated her to continue. She sells herself as like the true daughter of the first daughter or something. I don't remember. So there's the one. His two living oldest sons, because unfortunately many of his kids have died, and in a lot of not good ways. His two oldest sons have another faction of the church where they're like, no, we're the ones, and they have warred and fought and between each other. And then the third faction is the two youngest sons, because I think at the end it was 13 children he had with Hak Jahan. But his two youngest sons, they're the ones who founded Sanctuary Church, which is the one that's in Bucks County in Pennsylvania, where they were all over the news at one point because they did have a ceremony that they were carrying AR-15s in, which was right after the shooting in Florida. So it was a huge ordeal. But where Sean Moon's youngest child, teaches that the rod of iron in the Bible is a gun, and therefore, as God's army, we need to be armed and ready to fight and kill. Oh, and by the way, they own a gun factory. The Moon's church always owned a gun factory and an ammunition factory. So it is convenient that like the second youngest son, I think, runs the gun factory. And the youngest son says we all need guns, but they're very much, for the Second Amendment. But yeah, so they're there. They are still, they have huge blessing ceremonies where anybody can come and get blessed, because it's like the Mormons who baptize dead people, and the Jehovah's Witnesses does something like that too, I think. And like the Mormons baptize Holocaust survivors. Great, right? So Moon's family will do lots of deceptive things to bring everybody into this one world under Moon, their God, sort of thing. But yeah, they're still trying to still there. They're still there. They're still there, and people are leaving. I wouldn't say people are joining, but they're having babies, and they're still having mass wedding ceremonies, and they're very involved with the Republican Party. They have been for decades.
Really?
Absolutely.
I couldn't have figured that out.
Yeah, right. I can't tell you, but I believe almost every former Republican president has spoken at church gatherings and been paid huge speaker fees. Like, it's a love fest. So
of course.
Yeah. But yeah, and me, like I left and I was like, it's good and I'm bad. And then I come back and I'm like, oh my God, I did not know. There's a Tumblr, how well do you know your moon, which lists all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, like his illegitimate son, I knew him. We did not know that. Yeah.
So from what I'm understanding is the Moon cult now is 3 separate factions, like the mafia apparently, and they own gun factories. So basically what you're telling me is don't talk shit about these people. They will find you.
Wow. I mean, I
Wow.
believe when Moon died, he was like the wealthiest religious leader ever, or what, like billions, I think. Like, I don't, like a lot. I don't know. I even like the details are hard to stay in my brain because my brain goes wah wah wah.
Yeah.
But
a lot of information to take in.
A lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of fervent belief. Yes.
Insane.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you stand here today. You are full of battle scars, but you still have a giant smile on your face.
Yeah.
That right there just talks about who your character is, and the fact that, you're out there trying to spread the word, and, a positive word, not like the word of God, but like a positive word about, hey, regardless of your battle scars, you can survive. Doesn't matter if it's childhood abuse from your mom or a religious person or your neighbor down the street or your own mental scars from just suffering from depression. Everyone has them.
Yeah.
It's now time to embrace them instead of hide them and learn from them and become better because of them. And I'm glad there's people out there like you that are spreading this message.
Me too, you. That's exactly it. When the day that the book came out on a Tuesday, and then on Thursday I was on Megyn Kelly in the morning, and I had a book reading in the evening here, and I'm sitting on my porch in the afternoon, and a neighbor walks by and he goes, "Hey, what's going on today?" I'm like, "Funny you should ask. I was on national television." Because nobody knew, right? Whatever. And so then, like 3 weeks later, his wife emails me. She says, "Thank you for giving us all the courage to tell our childhood stories." Because my story is unique. Like only my brother has the same weird combination, maybe, but the themes are unfortunately way too universal. And we all have shame. We all have scars. We all have something that thinks is wrong, or we all have pain, right? And yeah, we all can heal. And one of the trauma things is like, it wasn't that bad. It was really bad. It wasn't that bad. It was really bad. You had it the worst. Other people were worse, right? That's one of those things that it does. And there are many people who have way worse experiences than I did. Absolutely. And you can heal and you can find love, and it's not every day and it's not 24 hours of the day maybe, but my depths are never as bad. And when I'm in them, I almost always know there's a way out, and I almost always know what to do to get there. And if I don't, if I just like I don't know, put my hand on my heart and have a cup of tea, or like hold my breath or something, it passes, right? And that's if my story can help anybody know that, it's all worth it.
Well, I think you've done a great job of talking about that today, and I think more people are going to get an even a better idea of it if they pick up your book, To the Moon and Back. And the links are in the bio and the description of this video and the podcast. So please take a look at that and check it out. Lisa, you are, like I said, you're an amazing person, and I'm so glad there's people out there like you that spread this message.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Thank you for what you're doing. And I will say that I love when people reach out to me, because if I can give love to anybody, then it's worthwhile. So I'm here, and thank you for the chance to tell my story.
Absolutely. Again, all of Lisa's links are in the bio, and her social media, her email, everything down there below. Please reach out. But again, thank you guys so much for being here. Lisa, again, thank you. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. We will catch you guys tomorrow. Until then, peace.